What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the Running Water Podcast. Jordan Budd here. And I have Leah Piper.
Hello.
We're going to do a long overdue podcast about Leah's sheep hunt. We talked about it, I think, like a week or so before we were going on the actual hunt. But then we didn't end up actually. Well, no. We recorded it and then something happened and it didn't actually record.
So take two.
Yeah, but we're going to cover it. A lot's happened just since that hunt. I went to Nebraska on my elk hunt. Shot like a mid-370s bull. We'll get into that in a different episode. And now we're into
rifle deer in Idaho.
Yeah. Yep, and then we're going to Colorado after this, and then it's back to Nebraska to start guiding. So that's kind of our timeline. Not that it really matters, but yeah. So we are, I guess we'll just start from the beginning. If I remember right, after the last podcast, we had gone, yeah, I'm pretty sure that we had backpacked in, kind of did a hell weekend through a bunch of burn that was all fallen timber and stuff. We had super high winds, trees were coming down around us. It was kind of stupid. But we made it and we didn't end up seeing any sheep on that trip. So we were going into your trip really not having a target ram found. That I think kind of worried both of us, because I just assumed with how many days we had put into it scouting up to that point that we would have had a ram found.
Yeah, like we were able to scout quite a bit. With my job, I work 312s, and so we had a lot of 4 days and sometimes even longer stretches that we were able to go in and scout. And I think we kind of went in cocky, like, oh yeah, we're going to find a big ram and we're going to be able to sit on him.
I was like, it's not going to be that hard. I mean, it will be hard, but it's not going to be that hard to find them. It's going to be hard to get to them.
Yeah, and then it became a holy crap. Like we saw rams the very first scouting trip, and
in
then
June, and then 4th of July, and then we didn't see a single ram the rest of the trips. And so, I mean, we saw ewes and lambs and goats, but that was it. And so I think we definitely, it was kind of brutal. Well, yeah, we just underestimated.
Yeah. Which, I mean, it was a good experience to scout all those places, because I felt like we had the boxes checked. Like we weren't going to get into season and see a ram and be like, oh, I wonder if there's one over here.
Yeah, and take 3 days to get into.
It just takes a long time to get into places.
Yeah, and we were doing it. I think maybe we talked about it on the last podcast, but we did it by just you and I. Backpack hunting. So yeah, that was something that, I don't know, maybe I wanted to do more than you wanted to do.
No, I mean, I think that was totally fine. Like for me, it was like us against the world type of thing. Like that, and then we went through. Well, mostly you went through more hell than I did, because of your leg. So we talked. I'm pretty sure we talked about it on the last. I don't remember if we did. Maybe we just said that my leg had been bothering me or something like that, but we didn't really know why.
We thought IT band. Well, you thought IT band issues or something. You were just having troubles with it. It was really hurting your back and your leg. We ended up figuring out what that was right before. So a week before we went on the hunt.
Yeah, it was like 2 weeks before. We ended up staying home on a weekend because I literally couldn't walk. We were going to go scouting, and we were like, I can't do it. So I ended up going to
we were like, we just need to take a weekend off because your leg was hurting you so bad.
Yeah, so I finally got an MRI done and had herniated a disc in my back, and so the disc was squishing on my sciatic nerve pretty aggressively, and so I lost feeling going down my leg and lost the feeling in half of my foot. And so it made scouting and everything a little bit more interesting, and then hunting interesting, because I basically had like foot drop in my right leg and was kind of peg legging around, and was in an okay amount of pain throughout. There was definitely some Tylenol in my backpack at all times, for sure.
Yeah. I mean, it was basically you were regulating it with regulating it with Tylenol.
Yep.
And then before the hunt, they tried to, this is just the joys of a healthcare system. You went in to get an injection in your back. It would be a cortisone injection, right?
Mm-hmm.
In your back. And that's what they wanted to try first before they went any further to talk about surgery or anything like that. And
this was like 3 days before the
3 days before the hunt. We thought it was going to line up perfect.
Mm-hmm.
I'm telling this for you, but you went into the doctor's office. We're in there for basically 30 minutes between waiting and getting in a room and waiting for the doctor. The doctor comes in and says, I can't give you that shot because I'm sports medicine.
Yeah, he wasn't.
I'm not a spine doc.
Yeah, he wasn't a spine injection specialist. He was a sports med guy. And they had just set me up with a appointment with the wrong type of doctor.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, dude, I was like, I don't know if you hunt or not, but I have a once in a lifetime hunt next week and I'm going on it.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's no not going on it. So I was really hoping that I was going to get this injection and it was going to make me feel good. And he was like, I'm super sorry. But he did hook me up with some steroid pills,
mm-hmm.
and those definitely helped. And so for the actual hunt, I was on steroids.
You had a week's worth of oral steroids.
Yep. And so I was able to use those, and they really did help.
Mm-hmm.
I really wasn't in that much pain. I just still had the numbness in my leg and my foot, but overall it was a lot better. And so, so we went in.
Well, that was hurdle number 1.
Oh, yeah. Second hurdles.
Hurdle number 2 was fires.
Oh, yeah.
We had literally, this has been the worst fire year, that I've seen, which doesn't mean much. I'm not that old.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of people who are like old timers that say that this is the worst fire year they've seen. And there was fires popping up all over the place. So we kind of knew that going in some of our scouting, like we had smoke and it was miserable.
Mm-hmm.
But our plan was the season opened on
Friday.
On a Friday.
We were going to go in on Wednesday.
We got there Wednesday afternoon, got to the trailhead, parked the vehicle, and it was literally so smoky you couldn't see 500 yards,
mm-hmm.
and there was ash falling on us. Like on the pickup, there was ash. And I was like...
The wind direction from the fire was blowing right at us, which the fire was a solid... about 15, 20 miles away. It's not like we were in danger, but because the wind direction, it was just making it impossible. Mm-hmm. And then we were about to load up heavy packs and haul in there. And it just seemed really dumb to put our lungs through that when we were 2 days before season.
Yeah.
So we hung out and camped at the trailhead.
We did. Yeah. We hung out that night, woke up the next morning. It was still smoky, but not as bad. And at that point, we really didn't have a choice. We had to go. So we hiked in and set up kind of at our first, I don't know how far that was, but it was kind of like in the beginnings, you could say, of sheep country,
mm-hmm.
but at the very bottom of the valley. And there was a running stream down there that gave us good water. It was fairly flat camping. And so we set up the tent there first, not really expecting to stay there the whole time.
No, I think we just kind of wanted to start there, and we knew there was a pocket that we hadn't been able to scout very well.
Yeah, we hadn't been able to see
through. Yeah, we had walked underneath it.
Yeah,
but through some rock slide chats that we had with some other people that had the tag in the past, and then one of our buddies who had had an elk tag in there a couple years previous, who had walked up a ridge and bumped some rams. Both of those people had said, yeah, they were in this zone. And so we're like, well, we should probably hike up and see if we can see anything in there. But you had to hike the opposite side of the drainage in order to look in there. And so we were like, well, we might as well camp down here, drop a bunch of our gear and stuff. And tonight, where it's still, scout day, we figured we could get up on the opposite side. And if we worked our way around, not only would we be able to see into that pocket, we would potentially, if we worked around far enough, we'd be able to see up the canyon a few miles where we had scouted and seen rams in our 4th of July scout trip.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why we kind of chose down there.
Yeah, to start with, and then we just planned on like, all right, we're gonna look at that for a couple days. We're gonna pack up our stuff. We're gonna move further in and higher, and we're gonna hunt there for a couple days. And if that doesn't work, we're gonna go further.
Yeah,
and that was kind of our plan, is just to keep kind of going back. And we ended up going back to where we went over the 4th of July, just like you said. I forgot you said it until I said it, and then I said, "Oh, you already mentioned that." Anyways. We went back into there because that's where we'd seen the rams. And so, yeah, that first evening we climbed up on the opposite side.
About 1,000 vert through
about 1,000, yeah.
Nasty blowdown. It was pretty steep and it was
kind of
rough.
sucked.
It was hot.
It was really hot. I didn't really plan on going as far over as we did. But then we just kept moving and glassing and moving and glassing, moving, glassing. And finally we got over there. And yeah, set up to where we could see the opposite hillside. It was 1.5 miles over there.
Yeah.
And you found sheep?
Yeah, pretty quickly. All of a sudden,
found a ram.
I was like, there's a sheep. And I was like, oh, I think it's a ram. Like, young ram. And so I was like, just wanted to make sure it wasn't a ewe. But yeah, it was a little ram. And then all of a sudden, another buddy walked out. And we were looking at those. And we're like, yeah, they're small. And then I could see some movement in the trees. And I was like, there's 2 more that are about to come out. And another one that was like, okay, that's an okay ram. And then the last one came out. And we were both like, a big ram, finally. Like, you could instantly tell it was a bigger ram than we had seen in our scout trips and stuff like that.
Just like bigger body, pot belly.
Yep.
He walked with a limp. And at that distance, you could just tell, and it was still kind of smoky, so we were looking through some haze, but you could just tell, like, down at the bottoms, he just carried, like, more mass around. And Leah's like, I'm going to shoot that one. I was like, okay.
I feel like if we hadn't scouted at all, and that was the first, like, decent ram we'd seen, then we probably would have been like, okay, we know where he's at. We're going to go on, like, you know, a big loop or something like that. But where we had scouted as much as we had, it was kind of like we knew how hard it was to get around in there. It's like if you see a mature ram, like, that is a solid ram, don't mess around. Like, it was like we'd already put in the days and the miles that it was just like, that's the biggest ram by far that we had seen. And so it was like, okay.
Yeah. And something about, I mean, I don't want to give, like, too much away about it, but they're freaking timber rats. Like, those rams were not at the tippy peaks, like, where we saw a lot of, like, the ewes and lambs and, like, out in the open. They're, like, in the timber where it would be hard to hunt anything. And but way more steep.
Way more steep.
Normal.
It was like big buck country, but nastier.
Yeah. Yeah, it was kind of wild. So we're about that time, we'd seen them come out. They were feeding around. The smoke moved in 4 hours before it got dark.
5 o'clock, and it wasn't going to get dark till 9. We couldn't see.
Yeah, we couldn't see. So we left. I mean, there was literally like, we can't see. It's pointless. So we went back to the tent and just like got our gear situated and just kind of hung out. And then that next morning, we woke up and the smoke was probably about like the morning before.
It was rough.
It wasn't like a ton of smoke. Or wait, wasn't it?
No, it was bad.
It was bad. Yeah. It was way bad. So where those sheep were headed, they were kind of headed towards the top of this ridge.
Which was kind of in the direction above our camp.
Yeah, we could kind of see it.
Way over.
Yeah, so we're like, let's let it get a little bit light at camp so we can glass that and just make sure they didn't come over, which in the grand scheme of things, how big that ridge is, like we could see a very small part of it. So they would have had to been in the right spot, but we had the right idea. And then we decided to go around. And then we were like, and then we'll go around and we'll climb up in there. And then according to Onyx, shooting across from where I thought we could get to glass to where those sheep were, it was going to be within 600 yards. Yep. It was basically 600 across the whole thing. So I was like, it's got to be.
Yeah, it wasn't a huge pocket. And so it was like, but you just couldn't see in there unless you had climbed 1,000 vert. And so basically this basin was like situated in a north to south direction. So you could go up the east side of it or the west side of it, kind of like the bottom. And then just depending on which side you're going to be able to look across at or kind of be on the side of. So that day, with the wind the way that it was, we decided we're just going to hike up and go up the east side of it, and thinking that the rams looked like they were working around towards the west side. So if we were on the east side, we'd be able to shoot across to the west side.
That's right.
And so 2 brutal hours and 1,000 vert later.
1,000 or 1,200, like, you know, right in there, but it was obviously all off trail. It's all like shale, take one step forward, basically slide 2 steps back type of a deal. And I mean, you were doing all that in 800 yards as the crow flies.
Yeah, not far.
No.
It was steep.
It was misery. So
and it was hot. We did some sketchy rock scaling as well at one point in time that I was like, my mother would not approve of this.
It was some rocketeering. And it was fine.
Yeah, it was totally fine.
It was fine. But yeah, we got up got to the glassing point, sat there, looked around as much as we could. I kind of thought from where we got to that I would be able to climb up a little bit higher and to get on more of a main ridge and kind of look over the other side and see some more country. But there was cliffs and there was no way that you could do that without exposing yourself to probably where the rams could see. And I was like, well, that's pointless. So I was like, we're just going to sit here all day.
Yeah, we're kind of cliffed out, kind of the bottom third of the basin. And so we hung out, we had lunch, we glassed our butts off, we took naps, we glassed some more.
Yeah.
We were ready in case something
We ran
happens.
out of water up there. By the end of it, we ran out of water. We were all pretty much set up, and here comes the smoke. About the same time, 6 o'clock.
4:35, yeah.
Oh.
It was pretty early still.
Yeah, it was early. And we could see 400 yards, maybe 500. And at one point in kind of that, where you would expect rams to get up or just things in general to get up and start moving for the evening, I heard 2 rams hit heads. And I'm sure that they were up there and we couldn't see them because of the smoke.
We got ready because we're like, they're going to walk out of the trees. We're going to be able to see them. I'm like set up on a rock. And we sat there for probably another 45 minutes and the smoke just got thicker and thicker and thicker. And we could hear them banging heads in there. We couldn't freaking see them.
Couldn't see them through the smoke and couldn't get closer really.
Yeah.
So.
And we didn't want to bust them out.
Left.
I mean, that was opening day. It was not the day to push things.
And we didn't see anybody.
No.
I mean,
not even elk
hunters. There was nobody
or anything.
Deer hunting. There was nobody elk hunting that we saw. There was really no tracks.
I loved it. It was like the first
crazy.
time. I mean, probably because everyone else thought that people were idiots to go into the path of where the smoke was. I mean, there was smoke everywhere. I think the entire state was hazy at that moment. But like, there was like 5 or 6 active fires, and it's like, why would you go where the wind is blowing away from that fire? It wouldn't take much to be away from the smoke. And so it's like, well, why would people go in there?
Yeah.
So it hindered our lungs, but it helped us because we didn't have other people messing around.
For sure. Yeah. So we went back to camp, hung out.
It was pretty relaxing, if I'm going to be honest. Like, obviously we like worked our butts off to like climb all of these like, things, but every night, because the smoke came in, we like went back a little early, had dinner, and
we were in bed by the time it was dark, and like we're able to get up early
or easier.
Yeah. And then one little mishap that happened before that. That morning, I almost fell into a stream, or I almost fell into the creek, like pretty substantially. I don't know how I didn't fall in worse than I did. I was shimmying across a log, just walking across it basically, and early morning it was frosty. And
slippery.
There was a spot where it was pretty close to the water at the end, and it was slippery on top, and I like road runnered it and landed on my back on my pack, and my pack basically landed like on the tree. One of my legs took a dip, but not that bad, and I got it out of there before it really went down my sock any further than like the top. It got the top of my sock wet. And I got shimmied up out of there, and Leah comes across and goes, hey, is there supposed to be a digiscoping adapter on your spotting scope? Because there's not now. And so I'm like, seriously? Because you want to film this stuff. I mean, it's fun, like filming sheep and whatever. And so I had like the all-in adapter on my spotting scope to put my phone on. And it had fallen off at some point. I went back across the log, looked around as much as I could, came back and was just like, well, I guess I'm not going to get it. Sorry. Like, I don't know. I can't find it. And that night,
she said it a little more aggressively than that, but we're gonna spare you guys.
I think I hit a tree with my trekking pole.
I think you. And I just giggled and was like, "It sucks, but it'll be okay."
Yeah, well, it's not like it's not like, oh, we can go to town and get one later, or we can.
We were deep already.
Yeah, we can have somebody bring one to us. Like that was out of the question.
Yeah, well, especially because they're so
frustrated.
They're so spotting scope specific. That it was just like, who do we know that has this type of spotting scope that would have that adapter that could, at least like meet us at the trailhead or something, and we'll just buy them gas. And it was just like, yeah, it's not going to happen. We're just going to have to like hand hold it if we want a picture or something. So, but yeah, so that night after our hike up, hike down, all the things, we get back to camp and we had set up our sleeping bags in one direction, and we were kind of like in some holes and funk, and so we're like, well, let's change it in the tent. We had the Argali 4-person tent, so you have a little bit more space to like switch things around. And we went to move our sleeping pads over, and I don't know how or why that freaking adapter was underneath my sleeping pad somehow, and Jordan about skipped for joy.
Yeah, I was
just
like
yes! Yay!
That's one gear thing that we did change for the hunt is we had been using the 2-person Argali, and we ended up going to the 4-person, which is probably what we use the most for you and I. 2 people with gear, you can have both your sleeping pads on one side of the pole and then be able to have your gear in the rest of it. 2 entrances, and it was just a little bit better. We didn't take
a stove.
No, we didn't take a stove. We didn't take an insert. It was getting cold enough at night. I was like, I think we're going to avoid most of the bugs. And so we each have Bora bivvies. BORAH. They're like $100 or $110, $20. And it basically is a ultra lightweight material. I think they weigh like 9 or 10 ounces a piece.
I would be surprised if it's even that.
They're dirty light.
Like,
they might even be 7
I was going to say like
6.
6. Yeah. Like it's like
they're super
freakishly
lightweight.
Mm-hmm.
For like an early season bivvy, like if you're using a tarp with it, that's awesome, because basically it just has a net like around your head, so you can zip that up to keep like bugs and stuff off your head. But then the rest of it is like a really lightweight material, just acts as a good barrier for like sticks and stuff to puncture your pad. So we each had one of those, and then when you leave, you can like leave for the day, you can zip the whole thing up so like bugs and stuff aren't crawling in your sleeping bag.
Or if you're in the desert, a snaky snake.
I wouldn't be using that thing in the desert. Hell no.
But yeah, so that's what we had, and so it was easy to just like pick up your whole sleep system and toss them around the tent.
Yeah,
the reason we went with a 4-person was because of my leg too. I was struggling to like
you kind of have to crawl in and out of the 2-person.
But and like you still somewhat have to crawl in and out of the 4-person, but there's just more pivoting room, if you will, around that center pole. Whereas like the 2-person, you kind of have to scooch up your sleeping bag and into it, and then scooch out of your sleeping bag and out of it. And with my leg the way that it was, I was moaning.
It was hard for you to get going and get up, and there wasn't really anything I could do at that point.
Yep, and it's just sometimes it's nice to have that little bit more space. Like when we had the 2-person, we were not like making coffee in bed or anything like that. And then you have the 4-person, and it's like you just have your stove within arm's reach in the morning.
I do like that's one thing I do like in the mornings, or that I did anyways. And I have done it before, but having like the stove and some water and everything like right above my head. So it's like I wake up in the morning, I can get that stuff ripping as we get up and kind of get ready and have coffee and whatever. So
yeah,
it worked out really good. It's a big footprint, so that's something that we weighed. We went back and forth on a little bit, but so yeah, at that point, then we were just like, okay, we knew this ram was in this pocket, and it was like, what do we do the next day? They were headed higher, so we were like, they could go over this saddle and it would lead into this bigger basin.
Long
that we
drainage,
had been in,
basically.
a big long drainage, yeah. And it was still smoky that next morning was still smoky.
Yep.
Yeah, so we were just like, well, let's take a hike about. And that's what we did. We left camp where it was at, and we went up the drainage. Another, it was like 2 miles.
More than that. It was closer, 3.5, 4. Because we went all the way to the end of it.
Yeah, and then we went up to the end of it.
Yep.
So that was more. Yeah.
And then, because there's like 2 to like so the drainage actually turns and drops over into a whole nother drainage, and you could go all the way to the end, which would have been like 6 miles. But along the way, there's like 3 smaller basins that just kind of like our little pockets that you can check. And so we just kind of worked our way up there and checked kind of each of those basins, and one at the very, very back that originally Jordan was like, I think if we got to the back of that last basin, we could climb up on the ridge and still hunt our way down and maybe run into those rams. And when we got back there, we looked at that freaking rock face.
Yeah, I was like, I ain't going up there.
No way.
No.
It was at least 1,500 vert, and it was nasty.
Yeah, I mean, we had climbed, at that point, we had probably climbed 1,200 or so. And it was another 1,500 about straight up, and then another, 3 miles, 4 miles back to camp, like cutting across some stuff.
And it wasn't going to be like an easy...
Oh, no.
It was going to be like a bouldery,
classic example of getting ahead of yourself with Onyx.
Yep.
Making this big loop that you're like, oh yeah, I can crush an 8-mile loop in a day. Like, no, that sucks.
Or like you think
Off
like,
trail.
oh look, we can just go on this ridge. It'll be easy to come back down. And then when we're like 3/4 of the way up there, we were looking up at the top, and there was like, no way are we getting on that ridge. Just like, it's kind of a spiny, like sketchy. Yeah, it was just not going to be conducive to that. Lower was more of a like softer ridge that you could walk down, but the very top was not.
Yeah.
And so
you couldn't even make it.
Yeah, we were like halfway up that drainage, and we ran into a tiny little ram, potentially the one that we had seen, the very first ram we had seen that we thought was weird that he was all by himself. And turns out this little guy was potentially all by himself again. Yeah. Just like a little 3, maybe 4-year-old ram.
And he was skittish. He like, we were creeping around in the trees, and
just in case he had some friends with him. Yeah.
And he was gone. He took off and basically covered over a mile and, a lot of elevation, and went over a saddle into this next little thing and did it in about 10 minutes. And I was like, ugh.
And it would have taken us hours. That's when you realize that you were outmanned in the leg department. Yeah.
100%. So yeah, we did a big loop up in there on the way out. Leah ended up spotting some rams. There was like 3 of them, I think. The oldest one was like 5, 6 maybe. They just were pretty small. Could have had the opportunity to shoot one.
800 yards when we first saw them.
Yeah. Had the opportunity to get closer. But you passed.
Yeah.
Passed on it.
Second day of the season. And it was just like, I don't know. We had allotted 12 days. And then if we really had to, we could come back for some long weekends and stuff. And so it didn't make sense to be pushing it for a small ram. So yeah, back down we went, dropped a lot of vert back down to camp. Mm-hmm. And that's when it was kind of like, man, camping this little is kind of hard. But there wasn't very much water up higher either. We found like one spring that we were able to refill our water.
Yeah.
And then it just disappeared again. And so it was nice to be down by the creek.
Yeah, it was. It really was. Because then, it was just like, it was super dry, dusty,
smoky,
very hot. We would get back and be able to like wash our faces, and you're not like conserving water like as much as you normally would. And the other thing too is like that packing in with the heavy weight. I mean, we had heavy packs going in because we were set for 6 days, 7 days we had enough food for.
Yep.
Plus then you've got your gun and all that stuff. So with your back the way it was, we didn't want to go too crazy. So that's some of why we camped there too, is so it just we felt a little more mobile with lighter packs and being able to move.
Mm-hmm.
And we were just like, if it takes us an extra 30, 45 minutes, it takes us an extra 45 minutes. Like, we're just it's whatever. We have headlamps.
Yeah.
And guns. Like, we'll be fine.
Yep. So yeah, that was our third day kind of on the mountain, and we were like, all right, we've done kind of 3 every day. We've done well over 1,000 vert up and down, and was kind of like, all right, that's not super sustainable for 12 days. So we were like, tomorrow we're going to go up and we'll like kind of gain some elevation, but we're going to glass into that basin. And if we don't see them, we're going to take a rest day.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it seems like it makes sense to kind of like chill and just glass and not like go on a big traipsing walkabout like we had the day before. And so yeah, we went to bed with that as the plan. I got up in the middle of the night to go pee, and the stars were out. Mm-hmm. And every night before that, I mean, like we said, it was so smoky that we couldn't glass until like 8:30. 9 o'clock in the morning, because that's when the sun would finally come up over and you'd be able to cut
kind of see through it. Yeah.
And so when I got up and it was the starry, beautiful skies of the Milky Way, I was like, oh, it's game on.
We're going, like, we're going to be able to see.
We're going to be able to see. So before that, I hadn't even been setting an alarm because the smoke was so bad in the mornings. And so I actually set an alarm, went back to bed. My alarm went off like 3 hours later. And I was like, Jordan, wakey. Because I was like, we can see. So we got to get up and we got to go early. And so we got up, packed up our stuff, and then we were trying to kind of be over where we had gone the first scout day, not as high, but just kind of where we could see into the basin, kind of as first light of the morning came along. Had a couple more sketchy river crossings on slippery logs that neither of us busted our butts, but I'm pretty sure we were all puckering a little bit going across, and then was hiking up the other side. And I happened to, we're in pretty decent shape at this point because we've been scouting so much, but you still have to stop and breathe every once in a while. And we stopped and we were taking a breather, and I have the image stabilizing binos in my 6s, Yep, in my chest harness, and that's what I over the period of scouting, we'd figured out that I would do the 10 Zulu 6s, 10 power in my chest harness, and then I was carrying 15 power Zulu 10s, as like with my spotter, as instead of using a spotting scope, we were trying to lighten me up a little bit, because before, when we were doing scout trips, I was having 10s on my chest, 15s in the backpack, and a spotting scope.
Yeah.
And so when I had to all right, we got to add a rifle to this, I decided to ditch the spotting scope. Jordan had a spotting scope, and then I could see pretty darn good with the 15s. And so it was just kind of like I was the quick scanner, and if there was anything that needed to be like zoomed in on, that Jordan would do that. So anyways, we stopped to take a breath. I pull up the 10s, and I look, and at the very bottom of the basin that we could possibly see, I see movement going like through the tops of the trees, and was like, there's sheep right there. And so we like quickly sat down. Jordan whipped out the spotter super quick and managed to get like a 10-second video of a couple of sheep going across this clearing in the trees. And in that 10-second video, you can see a ram limp across. And we're like, yeah, that's the gimpy ram. You know, it's like obviously bigger than the rest of them too. And which we only could see like 2 others that had walked it through that clearing. And then he walked through at the end. And so we're like, holy crap. Okay. And instantly I'm like, let's go.
Yeah.
And Jordan's like, whoa. Let's see if we can see them.
The way they were headed, I was like, if they end up going around the side of the hill, like, we don't want to be down where we can't see them. Like, they were still on their feet and walking.
It was the first 20 minutes of light.
I was like, we need to chill for a second. Just like, if they end up going out around the hill, that's fine. But we need to know that they're going to do that before we climb up there. And then have to climb back down and then back up. And then we don't know where they are.
Yep.
So, you got to think about some of that stuff before you just, like, take off running, which I've done before and then lost animals, which is why... Now I'm like, don't move.
Watch them. Try and bed them down.
Yeah, so I tried to get another angle, tried to climb to get another angle, and then I couldn't see him.
We were like behind a ridge, almost basically the ridge that we had sat on.
Yeah.
The first opening day, they were just tucked behind it, and we just couldn't get the angle on them without basically climbing 1,000 vertical feet. And it was like, okay, do you climb 1,000 vert to look at them on this side, or do you just go down and climb 1,000 vertical feet and be within shooting distance?
Yeah.
So that's what we decided to do. And so it was a chance that they were going to walk out and we weren't going to be able to see them. But we couldn't really see them either way. And it's like, if you're going to climb 1,000 vert, you might as well be within shooting distance. So we took the chance and we just tried to haul ass.
Yeah, we got down to the bottom near, there was a, like, somewhat of a trail, like a very poor trail that went through there. And we dropped some stuff. You dropped your tripod and 15s.
Yeah.
We knew it was going to be pretty close, probably. So, yeah, we just went up there, dropped as much stuff as we could, started climbing. Took us freaking literally forever to get up there, it felt like, because it was the same stuff. I mean,
this time we went up the west side.
Yeah, like we went up a different. Yeah, we went up like a different side of it. Again, just hoping to be able to shoot across, and we finally got up there, and
it was nerve-wracking because we hadn't seen them in like an hour and a half.
We hadn't seen them. There was rocks that we were going up that was loud. That there was no way to not be loud.
Yep.
Like.
And dropped our packs underneath a pretty sweet white bark pine that had some big gnarly roots and stuff coming out, and in a sheep bed basically dropped our packs, and then crawled up to where we could kind of see over and into the basin, and I grabbed my binos out of my chest harness and started glassing around kind of from my knees, not with my head barely peeking over because we weren't sure where they were going to be, and within 30 seconds, I saw one bedded below a log.
Yeah, she turned around and I couldn't see. I wasn't even trying to look over and see. I was just like back there watching her. And yeah, you turn around and you're like, I can see a little one bedded. And I was like, F yeah. Like they're going to be right there.
They're all
I was like, we got this.
Yeah.
Like we're already within shooting distance. Like our biggest challenge was finding a place to actually shoot from that we could see through the trees because we were in the timber. And they were kind of in the timber, and trying to match those two, trying to match a couple lanes up was difficult.
Yeah. So our options were we could swing down to our right and go like kind of in.
You'd end up going lower.
And then just kind of in like where they could see you in order to get around the edge of the trees that were in front of us. We'd have to be within, like, they could see us basically because we'd have to be on the same, like, into the basin basically. Yeah. Or option B was to the left of us up through a nice crack in the rocks and do a little rock climbing and get up on top of like a spire up there.
Yeah. It was a little spire.
That's what we decided to do.
Yeah. So I had like tripod with spotting scope on it. I had my camera and then I had something else. And so my hands were pretty full. But the crack was narrow enough. You basically put like, it was very steep, but you put one foot on one side, 1 foot on the other, and you just kind of like walked up like that. And so that's what I did. and you came after me, I like popped my head up after we got up on the spire, and I glassed a little bit, and I was like, I can see 2 of them bedded for sure. Couldn't tell which ones they were. But we were trying to stay as low as possible and not kick rocks off, which was basically impossible. And yeah, got maneuvered around and got you up there, and I got set beside you. I definitely had a better sitting spot than you did.
Yeah, we ended up basically sitting on the spire, which maybe was 6 feet wide.
Not even.
But it, like, at its widest. And it's not exactly flat. There's, like, spiky rocks all over it. And so I had a spot where I could sit, and basically my right butt cheek had a place to land, and my left butt cheek was in the air. But I had to sit that way because the flattest spot needed to be where my bipod was going to be. And it was so narrow that my bipod, when I had it out, I have a taller bipod. I have a hatch out west
that
bipod.
You bought just for this hunt, which I think maybe we talked about a little bit. I was not on board at first with, because I was like, I don't know if you need to be able to sit behind it. I was like, for all the sheep hunts I've been on, like there was only like 2 times maybe we had to shoot off a tripod sitting because it was so steep. But thank God you had that thing.
What we were lower than them, and just the angle that we ended up needing to shoot up. If I had just a short, 8-inch or whatever
like a
bipod, it would have been we would have had to mess around for some shooting angles a lot more, because like it couldn't really lay prone on these rocks that there wasn't enough rock. Like literally half of my body would have been dangling off of the cliff.
And here's a point I want to make real quick, just with bipods in general. A lot of sheep hunters or people going on sheep hunts, they're like, a bipod is just a paperweight. I'm not going to bring it. I'm just going to take my pack. Well, if we were to try to take our packs up that thing, there's just so many times. I mean, my sheep hunt was the same way. Like, we dropped our packs. Like, there's just a lot of times I've been on sheep hunts that, like, you don't have your pack at your disposable, or disposable.
We would have been clanking it around on the rocks or something, and maybe I would have been able to get the pack stood up and then like held on to it. I just feel like it wouldn't have been as solid either. Anyways,
don't discount bipods.
Yeah,
just try to get a light little bit of weight, or try to figure something out.
Work out more. But anyways, I really like this bipod because it extends out to 26 inches, I'm pretty sure. And so you can sit behind it, or it can swing out wide, and you can go low. Like it's very adjustable. And so when we first got up there and just had it swung out, in order to get the angle, we had to have the legs most of the way down, which made the platform pretty wide. I would say maybe 2 feet.
Yeah, I mean, just think of how a bipod would look on a gun that's in a sitting position. I mean, the longer that gets, the wider your base is. So
basically, the spire we were on was not wide enough to have that bipod sitting on there, until I like looked at the bipod again, and I was like, oh, it adjusts, and you can actually swing the leg backwards.
You can swing the legs independently. Yep. So you ended up having one stuck in a traditional position, and you took the other leg and you kicked it back towards you.
Yep.
Which gave it a little bit, it was narrower, more of a narrow footprint, but it was way more solid for you.
Super solid. Like before, it was basically, I could get it set on the tip of one rock, and Jordan was going to have to reach over and hold on to my right bipod leg.
Yeah, I was like, when he stands up, I'm going to hit record on my phone, and then I'm just going to tell you, like, okay, and I'm going to reach up and I'm going to grab the leg so it stays.
Because I had to kind of swing into myself, swing to the left with the butt of the gun in order to get the angle on this sheep. And when I would do that, it would spring that bipod leg off of that one little tiny rock I could get it on. And when, thank God they were bedded, we were able to really take our time and set up and do everything like this. And so messing with that leg and kicking it back was just perfect. I mean, I was super solid. And then we were sitting there kind of like double checking. We're like, holy crap, like the 2 rams that we can see, the one on the left is the big ram.
I know.
Like,
it was kind of a miracle.
Of all of the shooting lanes, like there were like 6 rams up there, and we could only see like 2 well, but the one on the right had a bunch of tree limbs and everything in the way. And the ram, Gimpy, was the only one that we could see clear as day, perfect shooting lane. And then we just kind of had to sit there and wait.
And the anticipation was getting me. And there was one point, it was hard for you to sit there.
Well, my right leg has been my problem, yeah.
So now you're sitting on that leg that's been the problem. And anybody who has had any kind of sciatic nerve pain, that was like the worst. We'll get to that later. Yeah. But you were having a tough time staying there, and it was kind of a weird position or whatever, and I was getting...
We sat there for an hour and a half.
Well, no.
Oh.
We sat there for about 30 minutes.
Yeah.
And you were having issues, and I was like... The anticipation is getting me a little. I would like to know if this is going to happen or not. So let me just chuck some rocks off this cliff and I'm just going to make him stand up.
Yeah, it was like, well, I'm either going to need to shoot soon because I couldn't feel my whole leg had gone numb at that point. And I had a couple of sharp rocks that were jabbing me basically right where my nerve goes around my hip. And I was like, this is pretty ridiculous right now. And it was painful enough that it was making me shake.
Yeah.
And I just didn't feel like, I was like, I'm going to have to make an adjustment. And so either he stands up and I shoot him now, or I got to make an adjustment. And Jordan's like, I'll start throwing some rocks.
I was like, don't worry, I'll make him stand up. Well, he wouldn't stand up. He looked at, honestly, the first time I threw a rock and he turned and looked at us, I was like, oh God. Just the way he looked. I was like, oh.
Honestly, like sheep hunting is so cool. And like, you don't realize how cool it is until you're within a small distance from sheep. And they like, just kind of like head up, cocky, look around the mountains like, I own this place. Like, I am the king of
They're the
mountain.
coolest animals.
Yeah.
Ever.
And so, yeah, she throws this rock and he just kind of like tilts his head and looks down at us. And I felt like the smallest,
I know,
like little bean on the planet. And then he proceeds to literally just like scratch his ear and flop his whole head on the ground and go to sleep, full body laying on the ground. And we were like, okay, well, that's not going to happen. So let's change how I'm sitting.
I'm like, well, and you didn't have a huge lane. I wouldn't have had a lane from where I was shooting from. I could just film through some trees and stuff, through some limbs. You didn't have a huge lane either. So I was like, we have to be ready all the time because when he stands up to move beds, you're going to have to be on it.
If he had walked 5 feet to the right, he would have been behind trees. And he only had like 10 feet to the left and he was going to be behind some trees. And there was like another ram that had got up and walked by at one point in time and he popped out just a little bit further up the hill, and I probably would have been able to shoot into a zone over there if they walked out in the right spot. But it very much so was like we are set up for like a very short window. So we wanted to be like really set up at all times.
Yep. Yeah, so I'm like, okay, well the sun's going to come around and get on him and he's going to get up and move beds. Yeah, an hour after the sun had been on him. He's still there. And we're just like, I mean, set up, you're in an awkward position. We're both like a little bit downhill and we're sitting like trying to hunch over uphill. So you can just imagine, I mean, I don't feel sorry for us and nobody else should either, but I'm just saying.
It was in the moment, it was like kind of unfortunate that we weren't like laying prone or, you know, something
had
like that.
All the time. Yeah.
You know, even laying prone, I'm sure we've all laid prone long enough that pretty soon your lower back is like, okay, I'm over this. It starts to hurt. You know?
Yeah.
So anyways, I had brought along a small,
it's a Phoenix shooting bag.
A shooting bag.
They're freaking awesome. If you like shooting bags, they're ultra lightweight. I think that one was the extra small.
Super small bag. I'd actually added a male clip onto my chest harness. So that way when we went to go on a stalk, I could just ka-chink it onto my chest rig. And then when we got somewhere, it was an easy snap off into like thinking we were probably going to end up being able to shoot prone. I'd be able to lay back down, have that as a nice rear bag, all the things. Well, that rear bag ended up, it's a butt pad, and it ended up being for a different type of butt. It ended up being for my butt. And so I actually used that, put it on the rocks where my butt cheek had been, and sat on it, and was able to like sit and get the feeling back in my leg, which was great. It had been rough for a little bit there. And so, sat on it. And then once I was sitting like that, I was like, okay, I can sit here for a long time. So a solid, one from the time we got set up to the time that he finally stood up was an hour and a half. And there was a bunch of other rams that would go around. And every time one of the smaller rams would get up, and they'd go walking across kind of where they were bedded, and we'd be like ready. Just all we have to do is hit the safety off. Like, he's going to stand up, and he'd just watch them go by. No big deal. Like 2 or 3 times, he just put his head all the way on the ground and go back to sleep. And we were just like, holy crap. Like, this is kind of crazy. Yeah.
And finally, one of the small rams that had gone by him went above him and was kicking out of bed, and he was kicking rocks to him, and that made him get up. And he stands up, and I hit record, and I said, okay, whenever. And
safety was off. Shot was 412 yards. I think we ended up with like 3.28 MOA.
I don't remember what the dial to was.
Pretty sure it was. It's kind of ingrained in my memory.
7 PRC.
Yep. The new
flat shooting sucker.
Sawtooth edition of the cross rifle, 7 PRC. And I felt super solid. I reached my left hand up and had a hold of the opposite bipod leg, flipped the safety off, held basically mid-shoulder. Probably could have held a little bit higher. And then Jordan said she was ready by the time I had kind of my sequence done. And I just slowly I told myself to slowly squeeze the trigger. I still haven't seen the footage. Part of me was like, did I slowly squeeze it or did I yank on it? I don't, there's no way I yanked on it because it was a very good shot. But in the moment, you kind of are like, tell yourself to squeeze off a shot, but I was jacked a little bit too. And, one shot hit him really good, like low shoulder, pinwheeled both, like humeruses, if you will. And he reared up really high. And I didn't see the impact, but I heard the whop, and I was jacked in another shell, and I got back kind of on him, and it was just like a cloud of dust. And Jordan was like, he fell down.
And he was going down. Yeah, he was going down the hill because it was so steep.
And he was kind of tumbling down the hill. And so I kind of watched him, and then we watched him for a little bit, but he kind of like flipped behind some trees, and I couldn't see him, which was kind of panicky for me because I was like, crap, do I need to move? But Jordan could see his legs.
I could see a leg. I could see one leg. I could see one leg sticking out, and I was like, I know that's the sheep leg because I just saw him land there.
Yeah.
And I watched it we
sat there for a long
over 5 minutes
time, just making
staring at that one leg, and I was like, I'm pretty sure he would have tried to move. And then we kind of celebrated.
Yeah.
But how many times have we watched hunting films and somebody shoots a deer or whatever and it goes down immediately and they start jumping around, freaking hooping, hollering, which is ridiculous just in general.
True
is what I think. But anyways, and whatever it is gets up and goes away
and runs off while they're not paying attention.
You don't even know what way it went.
Yeah.
It drives me nuts. And I've had that happen where you shoot a deer and they go down with like clients or whatever, and they get up and they move again. They kind of gather themselves and they run off.
The shock has gone.
Yeah, and if you're not paying attention, it can bite you. And I was like, we ain't celebrating until that thing, I know that thing
hasn't moved in a long
time. So yeah, we sat
time.
there for 10 minutes and just made sure he was...
And then it was kind of like this surreal thing where, like, when we finally did, like, okay, he's dead.
I think I was like, how do you feel?
It's like, I don't know. I don't know how to feel right now. But it was just kind of like, you're shaking, the adrenaline's still going, and, like, you're like, holy crap, like, we just did it. Like, of all of the scouting, of all of the like miles and vert and trees that we walked over, of boulders we climbed, and all the like hours glassing, and then it's just over so quickly that it's just kind of like, holy crap, we actually did it type of a thing. I think we were both a little bit in shock.
Yeah, we were. And like, we'll talk about this. Well, we could talk about it now. Like a little sad.
Yeah.
That it was over.
It was our adventure of the year.
Yeah, we'd spent how many days?
21 days.
That was 21 days. Accumulative. With scouting, and then in that hunt, that was day 21.
Yep.
For like total time in the field, like actually, and that was like backpacking, hiking, like we were glassing for sheep, legit, like in sheep country. And yeah, just for it to like be over, it's just kind of I think when you love doing something so much and you put that amount of time in, like with those sheep, like feeling like we were living in tents, but
living with them.
But
like
living with them.
In their zone.
Kind of in their zone where like, nobody else was really. Like we never saw anybody.
Not
the whole time. Not even one
I thought
person.
Maybe we would get some backpackers coming through at some point in time when we were
Not when there's no trail.
There's no trails. There's nothing. And it's honestly, it's glorious. And we've both said that we're like, I think once a summer we might just go in there just to look at sheep.
Yeah.
And just enjoy it, and like have a weekend where there's nobody around, and like you just like go do your own thing and off trail and just mess around it, and you're still in the mountains. But I'd much rather do that than go on some cool trail that was in a magazine and you're up there with every Tom, Dick, and Harry in the freaking planet and their 10 dogs and like blasting music, and it's just like, I don't know, it's just different when you have the whole place to yourself.
Yeah. So there's a little bit of bittersweetness going on. I mean, the whole time, even thinking about it now. I think some of that's worn off a little bit, but yeah, I don't know. There's just some people that it's like all about that animal, It's like all about I don't want to say trophy, but yeah, it's like, it's all about the trophy.
And getting it home and getting it on your wall, and it's not so much about the experience.
And freaking showing all your friends and stuff, and people don't put enough into the experience, and I think they would get more out of it if they did, because I used to be like that a little bit, I think probably we all did, but maybe I've just got like enough time in the field now where I was starting to get it's
not about the kill, it's about the everything leading up to, and probably everything after.
Yeah, it's just, there's just more to it. And that thing, it was just kind of like,
holy crap.
It was sad. I mean, it wasn't sad, but it was just bittersweet, I guess. Yeah. So he was 412 yards from us, and it took us forever.
Took us an hour.
Took us an hour to get to him.
We had to drop down, get our packs. We drank some water, had a candy bar.
Yeah.
And then up and down, because he was across the basin, but you had to go down through the ravine and up the other side. And it was shelly, nasty, small rock.
Nasty.
But man, were we in their bedroom. We basically hiked to get to him. We went from sheep bed, and then we'd go 10 yards up the hill to another sheep bed, and then 10 yards up the hill to another sheep bed. And we basically leapfrogged sheep beds to get up to him. And then we got up to him, got it just soaked in the moment.
And he was bigger than you thought?
Bigger than I thought.
Yeah.
I mean, you look at, so many rams, and you just like, from afar, you just don't realize how big they are, type of a thing. And I obviously had some aspirations for this hunt, but I also knew that I didn't have like the mega unit of the state. I had a solid I knew I was going to have a solid opportunity, but I knew I wasn't going to get like the things you see at the sheep show.
Well, yeah, but yours is just like the most solid representation of a sheep, plus it had a notch taken out of the top.
Which we hadn't seen.
We walked up. Which is awesome.
I literally was like, holy crap, look at that notch. Like, he had a giant, probably 4-inch.
From fighting, like knocked it
hole
off.
into his horn.
And, like later, too, we aged him on the hill. We thought he was 8.5, I think. I think I ended up thinking that he was 9.5. But I was counting a false ring because I'm an idiot. But we got him back and like looked at him more, and I was like, I'm pretty sure he's like an 8.5-year-old ram.
Sent some pictures around where buddies that live in Canada that sheep hunt every year, and they were like, solid 8.5-year-old ram. Like, that's a great ram. Good job.
Yeah, that's an awesome ram. And then I'm looking at other people about the same time posting pictures of their Colorado rams that are 8.5, and the size difference. I'm like, oh my God. But it looked like we were on the moon, and it looked like they were in a green pasture, literally. And I was like, it's nutrition, man.
The feed difference.
The feed. Yeah. Oh, the feed difference is huge.
Yeah.
And their ease of living in some of that Colorado country, I shouldn't say that. It's not easy, but just like all the groceries.
They just can eat better. And where these rams are, where, like we said, we literally were just going through scree fields, and we would look around and be like, what are these things eating?
Seriously, they would literally paw out, like you would see them around their beds, paw out some stuff and then like stick their heads down there.
And eat something.
Like they're eating like freaking lichen off the rocks. It was wild.
Yeah. And so, I mean, I'm so happy with this ram. Honestly, awesome. I'm sad that he's at the taxidermist right now. I want RJ I want him back so I can touch him, because you like do this thing and then you go and like check him in with Fish and Game, and then you take him to the taxidermist, and then you're like, I did something so cool and I can't touch it right now. Like, I just want to be able to like look at it every day, which eventually I will, but yeah.
And so, it was hot. We were rushing to try to get him out of there. So we did a full body cape. Didn't skin his face out right then. It was just hot, and we were wanting to get the hell out of there.
It was really hot.
I mean, really
it was like
hot.
85
mid-80s. Yep.
And so it was, and we were in the sun on this kind of south-facing hillside, and so it was like quartered him out. Did a full body cape, which takes a little bit of time, and basically just like threw him in our packs. And was trying to get off the mountain kind of as fast as we could, because we knew that it was just stinking hot.
Yep. Yeah, so we loaded all of our stuff up and went down. Ended up we got back to camp. We discussed it a little bit. We got back to camp. We both did. I had enough weight on when I got back to camp. I was like, I literally cannot make it to the trailhead like this. Like,
yeah, I mean,
I am miserable.
We've kind of figured it out afterwards, and Jordan probably had over 90 pounds in her backpack, and I had over 80 pounds in my backpack. And the going down from where we shot the sheep was quite honestly the hardest physical thing. Yeah, it was the hardest physical thing I've ever done. Like sports, everything like that. Like those games or whatever, but like this was like a long period of time with a ton of weight on our backs, and just like sketchy hill that was like slippery, and you're kind of like, just obviously everyone knows you're off trail, you're side hilling, that side of your foot starts to hurt. So you start side hilling the opposite direction, that side of your foot starts to hurt. You're going downhill. At one point in time, we made it like maybe halfway down, and I looked over and we were at the same elevation of where
we had
glassed from the first night. And I was like, holy buckets. We have so much more that we have to drop. And like, by the time we got to the bottom, Jordan had beat me down by a little bit, and she was down getting water because classically, again, we had ran out of water because it was so hot. And so she was gathering some more water. I sat down and like just took my boots off immediately and was just like, holy crap. She came over. I think we each drank like a liter of water.
Yeah, we drank a ton of water.
Because we'd taken off and kind of like, I think we were both running on one granola bar up until that point from... Well,
some of it too, you look up that hill and know where you have to go, and you just gone up there 2 days before, and you know how long it's going to take you and how much it's going to suck. You don't exactly want to take 3 liters of water up there with you.
Exactly. Yep. So we each had, like, I have a bladder. I think it's the 2-liter bladder or whatever. But by the time we had climbed up, and I drank some on the climb up, and then, you know, drank some while we were skiing out and stuff like that. That basically was empty by the time
I had
we were
one
going
bottle
down.
full, and I was like, I'll be fine.
Yeah. So
yeah, I was thirsty, but if you can imagine, like, the valleys that have like little canyons and stuff off of them, there's usually like a pretty significant, like, say 5 to 800 feet that's really steep to get into the bottom of where that little basin or that little like canyon opens up. If you can imagine anything like that at home, probably not a very good descriptor. But anyways, it was downhill, but it wasn't that bad. And then we got to that last little portion down to the bottom where it was really steep. I looked off the end of it and I literally was like, I think I'm just going to kick my pack off of it.
Jordan had...
I was like, why not?
Both hinds and both shoulders. I had the head, the cape, and the extras bag. My rifle. And, I mean, that was kind of it. But, I mean, it just adds up. And she was like, I think I'm going to throw my backpack and just let it roll. And I was like, I'd do it. If I didn't have these horns on here, I'd do it.
I know.
And because, I wasn't thinking clearly. And thankfully she was like, man, if I did that and my strap broke or something like that.
I wasn't really thinking clearly. And in any other situation, I'd have kicked that bag off the edge. And I would have been like, this will actually be a really good test.
It's a good test.
The Kafaru, the arc frame. And, but I didn't. I was like, if I get to the bottom and one shoulder strap is broke, I have 90 pounds of shit that I have to carry out.
A long ways still.
And I have to. Yeah. Like, I can't not. So,
there's only two of us.
There's only two of us, exactly.
We did have an extra pack at the truck just in case one of us had a catastrophic failure or something like that. But yeah, smartly, she did not do that, but it was one of those situations where we were tired enough that we were thinking about shit like that.
Yeah. And we got back to camp and we had kind of made the decision. We had enough time. We were like, do we stay at camp overnight and then pack everything out the next day? Or do we just roll with what we have right now? As much as we could at that point. Get to the trailhead, just make it a miserable day, get it on ice, sleep in the trailer overnight, and then be able to get back the next day and pack the rest of it out, plus pack camp out. So that's kind of what we decided to do. Was we got back to camp. I think I left the shoulders.
I ditched the extra bag.
Yeah.
And the rifle.
And we ended up each having like 70 pounds, I think. And yeah, we got out, put it all on ice, slept in the trailer overnight at the trailhead, and then went in the next day, packed up all of our camp and the rest of the stuff. And once we got the cape back, like, it was hot. I was like, oh God.
Yeah, we spread it all out and put it kind of in the back of Jordan's truck. She has it decked, and so we were able to just kind of like lay it all out.
And so hopefully animals and stuff couldn't get to it.
Yeah, and kind of like left it open all night to try to like
You packed ice into its neck.
Yeah. Because
we did still have, like behind its head.
Yep.
So you stuffed ice back in there and left it open, and it cooled off really good overnight, I thought. And then, I got up the next morning and caped its head out, got that put in the cooler, and then, took the bottom jaw off and just like cleaned him up a little bit because I knew we were going to be showing him to some people. And then we hiked back in, got our camp and the rest of the meat, came back out, got in the cooler and loaded everything up and left. That was it.
Yep. One of those things where you're heading home and you're like, so now what?
I literally was. I was kind of like, you like put that much time, and I mean, we put a lot of time, resources, energy, gas money mostly, and backpacking meal money mostly to like get up and do that. And that's just kind of what we were all about this summer. And then it was just kind of like, we don't have to go back.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we're not going back now. Like, what are we going to do? I don't know.
Yeah, it was great.
There was plenty more to do, but you know what I mean.
Yeah. We kind of went on the tour and showed the head off to some buddies and my dad and parents and went dropped the cape off or we went and got him plugged, Fish and Game.
Yep.
And then they were doing, they had actually, I took a kit up with me and we had to do nasal swabs because they wanted to see if they had the pneumonia and stuff. And then I also, they had me take like a vial for blood. And then I think maybe I took a little bit of meat. No, she took meat off the back of the head. And they were doing a genetics testing on them, which, I mean, I think it's pretty cool. Like, because they do make you go check them in, they're able to do so much more stuff. And obviously, I gave them blood and everything like that for whatever they were testing with that. But the meat, they said that they took off, they were going to do a genetic test. And with the other rams and everything they have from their past data, they would see what the genetics were. And because it's a smaller herd, they want to know if they're starting to get inbred.
Right? Yeah.
And so if they're getting inbred, then they would know if they need to trap some rams from another unit and bring them in to this set. So that way they would be able to start breeding into the population, which I kind of thought was pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah. So there was some stuff like you took with you and we took the time to do. And then... yeah, then we took him to the taxidermist.
Yep, we use Hunter's Choice Taxidermy.
Yeah, Hunter's Choice out of Nampa, Idaho.
RJ's awesome. He's always done a really good job. He did your doll sheep.
He did my doll sheep.
Amazing.
He did a lot. Yeah, it's literally. I looked at a picture of it. I gave him a little bit of freedom. I think. Well, he was taking it to a show too, so I think he kind of like wanted to do some stuff to it. But everybody always gets like the uphill. No, right?
Yeah. They like go up and it's like uphill and it like turned back. And
or like super steep downhill. Yep. And I was like, I don't really want either of those. I kind of want an in between. And yeah, what he came up with off of a rock was like freaking awesome.
Yeah, it's cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, we'll see kind of what we do with this, but we got way too small of a house for all of these giant things we keep shooting.
I think laying down.
I think we're gonna have him lay down.
Yeah,
kind of like lounging with his legs dangling off a rock.
Yeah, that's one thing he did. Is at one point I thought he was gonna get up, and then he just kicked his leg out, and I was like, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, yep. So we're probably gonna do that, and then yeah, I mean, terrible problem to have. Too many sweet ass.
Too many mounts?
Body mounts in the house. And then, Jordan, we'll get into it later, but Jordan gets to shoot a giant elk, which
shot a big elk.
Also is having mounted. So we got a big taxidermy bill this year and not a big enough house. So
or enough money.
All the things.
Yeah, so good problem to have, I guess. But yeah, I'm trying to think what else with the sheep.
And can you think of any other like gear tips and tricks type of thing that people would not think of taking or would something that would be better?
Not really. A big pack.
Yeah.
Which bag did you take?
I did the Kafaru 44 mag.
Yeah, you did it with 44 mag. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah, I mean, in hindsight, I was on the verge of being too small with that bag, especially if we had tried to go out in one trip with all of camp and everything. I would have had things strapped to the back like a weekender that had gone to Walmart and bought a little
I know what else.
What?
How'd your leg end up?
Oh, yes. The final of the leg was I don't think
trip hurt you.
I don't think packing out that sheep was the smartest thing I've ever done.
No, well, I feel really bad because I was supposed to be more of a pack mule
in the moment
than anything. I didn't realize how much weight you had on, and part of that was because that damn gun. I didn't put into effect how
by the time
the gun's about
it's
10
basically
pounds.
a 10-pound gun, and really the sheep head and hide was 60 pounds.
Yeah.
It was 57 pounds for sheep head and hide. So factor that in, factor in the extras bag and the rifle, and we're well at 80 pounds or whatever. And, you know, I definitely tried to like keep all that weight on my hips, but let's be real. Eventually, like, you're just not doing good things to your body when you're packing that much weight. And, you know, it's just a long ways in there. And we did it, but I couldn't really sleep for the next week.
I couldn't sleep either. That night I was like, oh, I'm going to crash when I get there. And we slept awful the next week. Yeah. And I tried to, I had some time and my grandma wanted to go see my great uncle up in Canada. I was like, Canada.
Okay. They're right across the border up in Canada. And so it's like 8.5 hours from Boise to go up there. And I was like, you know what? I've got time off because I had this whole week off for sheep hunting and we got done quicker than I thought. So yeah, grandma, you want to go? Let's go. So we hopped in the car and oh man, did that car kill me.
You couldn't sit.
I basically,
we had to lay down.
We had to lay down the back seat and I laid down about half of the distance to get up there and then was in pretty decent pain the whole time we were up there. And then basically got across the Canadian border and laid the seat back down and laid in the back of the car the whole way home. And Jordan and my brother had to basically carry me into the house by the time we got back. And I was screwed. I tried to go to work.
Yeah.
If I could get up and like go on a bike ride and I'd try to loosen up. And obviously I was taking a ton of pain meds and things that were probably not good for my liver. I was trying to go to work and eventually I was just like, I can't. And I talked to one of the spine docs that I work with and he pulled out my MRI and we both kind of were like, oh, that's not good.
Yeah.
And, scheduled me up for some surgery. So I ended up having a micro disc on my back about a month ago from now. And best thing I've ever done. I went from being in pain for months to I woke up in post-op and was just like, am I on a ton of drugs? And they're like, no. And I was like, yay, I'm fixed. Like if I wasn't on a bunch of painkillers and I wasn't in pain, I was fixed. And it was like my leg pain went away instantly. I've never been so happy. I could have skipped out of there compared to how I got in there. And so if you're ever dealing with sciatic issues and you're putting it off and you're putting it off and you're putting it off, I am not normally a person that says go and have surgery. I literally do surgery on people all the time. And if I can avoid it, I avoid it. I had been trying to rehab this thing for far, far too long and pushed it far, far too long. And I mean, when I tell you I was fixed instantly, I was fixed instantly. Like I had some pain from my incision, obviously, but I have a tiny little inch-long incision in my back and it's a month later and I'm out here with Jordan. Like I'm not really hunting. I'm only supposed to be carrying 20 pounds. So I've got a spotting scope and a tripod and some binoculars and that's about it. And she sets me up on a glassy knob and I get to look around and stuff like that. But like she's going to have to carry all the meat out and everything herself if she shoots a buck. But I'm out and I'm about and I'm doing things and I highly recommend it if you are having sciatic issues, go get it checked out properly.
Yeah, or just back issues. I mean, get an MRI to just see what the hell's going on. I don't know. You dealt with it for months thinking that it was something else. I
thought that I had a hamstring injury and then it finally went down below my knee and everything went numb and I was like, uh-oh.
It was bad. So yeah, that was pretty much the trip. Now we're into mid-October now. I killed a bull the 23rd of September in Nebraska, a big bull. We'll get into that later. We've got Idaho deer happening now. I don't know what time it is, but I should get out there. It's 12:30. I'll head over in another hour or so. And hike in, and then
got Colorado that we're going to go the last week of
Colorado.
October.
Yep, and then Nebraska deer for 2 months. Ish. Month and a half. So, a lot going on. But
we'll try and be a little more consistent on the podcast. It's we've just been busy.
Yeah, it's been tough. So, all right. If you guys have any questions, let us know, and we'll see you on the next one.